Okay, guys, another week just flew by. They fly by faster than you can ever imagine. I was speaking to someone the other day and they said to me, if they're speeding up, it's because you're getting nearer the grave. How cool was that? Hey, that nice positive person he was. But the point, of course, is they are flying by. And this is the kind of last one in the series. Let's think Netflix series one, final one. I would like to think we could do something again, maybe the other side of the summer. I've just got such a busy schedule. And because it's the final one, we have three amazing guests. We've had amazing guests all year, but we've got three fantastic guests who are people who have been coming to this thing on a Wednesday night, gaining a lot out of it, and have made the transition into the low carb keto lifestyle type thing. So we've got a lot to learn from them, and I'm looking forward to it. So without any further ado, Andy, do you mind telling us a wee bit about your backstory in terms of who you are, where you are, what you do, and your MindStore pedigree? That would be quite cool.
Yeah, my name's Andy. Where am I? I'm down on the Hereford-Powys border. And what do I do? I was a PR agent, a writer, a sort of journalist, technical writer for many years. And I sort of stopped doing that and have started writing fiction. And that's what I'm about at the moment. MindStore, yeah, I remember going up to a MindStore course, MindStore for Life. This would be just after I became self-employed. I was a press officer for British Rail, and I left that, decided I was going to become a writer and all that kind of thing. And I just spotted one of your books, well, your book, on a bookstall in near Victoria Station. So I picked it up. Next thing I knew, now I was at Euston Station, getting the sleeper up to Glasgow. And what I learned there at the concert hall served me in good stead. I've been following it ever since, and I've repeated the course. I wouldn't say many times, but several times. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's worked really well. And thank you very much.
Cheers, Andy. Thank you. David, what about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's David Glover. I'm actually speaking to you right now from Nova Scotia in Canada. For those of you who don't know where that is, that's right out in the East Coast, probably as close to Scotland and Ireland as you could get in the Atlantic coast of Canada. I've been here since 2003. I emigrated in 2003, and my MindStore backstory is really like Andy. Back in the 90s, I had gone along to one of Jack's introductory courses, and I was very impressed, and then subsequently went along to two of the MindStore for Life courses, and that was back in the 90s. But I really kept that going along for that time, since the 90s right up until now. And basically, when I was in the UK, I was involved in the travel and tourism business. And then when I came to Canada, I was in business development and sales and marketing. But and more recently, I've actually bought, funnily enough, a Scottish import company. So I now import Scottish goods like tartan and kilts and all that good stuff, and spread it out throughout North America. So that's really the business I'm involved with now. But the most groundbreaking thing for me has definitely been the last year, which of course has been a challenging year, but with the low carb keto diet that I embarked on. Great stories there to tell, and all successful. So very good.
Fantastic, David. And our third guest is Bridget Mcgee. Bridget, do you want to give us an introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Bridget Mcgee. I live in Linlithgow, just outside of Edinburgh. Originally from Glasgow, and this is as far east as I go. I've been a MindStore member since the early 90s. I've done MindStore for Life, MindStore for Business, The Giants, Next Steps, and The Island. Wow. I was a civil servant. I used to work for the Scottish Government, but I'd had enough. So on my 55th birthday, I walked out the door, and I've not regretted it.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Wonderful. Good stuff. So the inevitable thing, of course, is that, I started this way back there a year ago, in fact, a year ago just now. because I thought people were getting challenged by the negative media. When we're recording this, it's the day after the night before when a prince and his wife were interviewed by Oprah. And, you know, one of the things that that seems to be sort of interesting there is the fact that actually I'm going to not do what I was going to do. Forgive me. I'll take a break there after. I was going to get into something I didn't want to get into. It did have relevance, but we'll not bother. There's the odd person might not appreciate it. So let's just quickly go back. So just over a year ago, I started to wonder about the media and the agenda that they were driving, which the media being the media, of course, is they thrive in negativity, they thrive in fear and anxieties, and they were building that big time. And I thought I could maybe do something. And then here we are a year later, all those shows. And the two reasons what they were driving me, first of all, was the management of the fear and anxiety. I came on to give some techniques. And inevitably, because of my own journey, I was interested in how do we maximize ability to deal with COVID should we have a personal encounter with it. And then the other background thing to that was the notion of Mind-Store Centurions. Could we live a really healthy lifespan? And could we just, you know, I suppose one night, the ideal thing would be when it seems time, you know, just fall asleep during the night and there you go. And that would be perfect. So because of all of that and attracting, because of that dynamic, we've had amazing people here who come and visited us, and now the final one's you guys. Do you want to say a wee bit, I'll come back to you, Andy, do you want to say a wee bit about your kind of journey into, I suppose, this whole thing about, you know, the lifestyle of metabolic flexibility? Can you tell us a wee bit about your own journey about that, and maybe why you've kind of made a transition or had a go?
Well, yeah. I mean, the very basic thing. I'm sitting here 5'9" tall, and I was weighing 15 stone. This is at the start of the COVID pandemic, yeah. And I talked to you at the Whispers with Giants thing in Glasgow a couple of years back, and you'd gone gluten-free. And I had my mother, who's sadly no longer with us. She was a celiac, and I thought, yeah, and I thought, I wonder whether there's something in this. So I started reading up on that and avoiding gluten. I got my GP to give us a gluten test, which was inconclusive. But he then kindly said, you've got to eat loads and loads of bread to get a kind of a reaction. Well, by that time, I thought, I'm not going to do that. So I sort of knew about this. And to cut a long story short, I knew about keto. I knew about low carb, high fat diets and that kind of stuff. And it always seemed too difficult to me. And when the pandemic hit, the two things that really got to me, the first was I had bronchitis last winter, and it went on for about 6 weeks. Starting on March the 1st, 2020, I started running every day, right? Just a mile, 2.5 miles. I sort of built it up a bit. And then I can't explain this, but in April, you remember when Johnson got ill with COVID? Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'm not his greatest fan by any means, but I thought, crikey, this is really awful. And I then, I don't know, around the same time, saw your video with Ivor Cummings, yes, the Fat Emperor. Yeah. And he started saying, look, you can do at least 3 simple things. Stop eating flour and carbs, rice and so forth. Stop eating sugar. And stop eating vegetable oil. And I think Ivor, I mean, I can't quote him, but he said, look, if you at least do those 3 things, you're going to be well ahead of the game in terms of resisting disease. So I rather took that to heart. I stopped eating flour, carbs, anything with flour in it. Same with sugar, anything with sugar in it. Now, I mean, there are things you do, sugar just pops up everywhere. So I'd be happily eating breakfast cereals, some oats. I mean, I do make an exception for oats, despite my accent. My folks are from Scotland, and I do have to have a bit of porridge now and again. But anyway, be that as it may, I worked out what you should and shouldn't be eating. Even, you know, Ivor would say don't eat fruit because of the high fructose content. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you know, we'll dice up an apple in some homemade salad and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I got into it. And of course, the great thing about it is what these guys are saying is eat steak, belly pork, chicken, roast, with loads of greens and stuff. And that I didn't find that too difficult. That was great.
Surprisingly.
So this sort of went on. And of course, I started losing weight at about, 1 or 2 pounds a month, very slowly, really. And I kept that up till Christmas. I don't know whether it's appropriate to say this now or later, but Christmas I found very difficult to stick to it. So I kind of stalled. And this went on for a couple of months, eating Christmas cake and Christmas pudding and so on, and perhaps not being quite so good. I mean, the reason I'm sort of saying that is if people are watching this are thinking, well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't go the rest of my life without a dish of pasta or a bowl of chips. Neither could I. And people do have relapses. But I sort of got back into it after Christmas in January and went on down. I think I'm 13.5 to be precise now. Winter's difficult because like the summer, I don't know about Nova Scotia, but here you could be out of the garden. We dug a vegetable garden over during the lockdown and the running's a bit easier. You can get on a bike and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, my kind of take on this is give it a go. And sure, temper it to your own situation. If you simply can't cope without a dish of spaghetti every once in a while, well, I don't know. Yeah, I just sort of go for it. I mean, you can get gluten-free pasta and that stuff. So so that very briefly is my journey into it. Very much fired up.
I might do this with you guys as we go along. Just quickly, Andy, it seems you got into it. You captured the notion of getting away from gluten, and your mother was celiac. I'm pretty certain my mother was. She died very young from a stroke. Don't think she knew she was. My sister is, and I've had a lot of challenges with gluten. But so you kind of got in, without getting into a big answer, you kind of get in for a health reason, or was it weight loss? You were quite heavy, weren't you? So what was your reason, do you think, initially?
I'd say it was a health reason, not just weight loss, but basically, I don't like the idea of COVID vaccination. I will do it like yourself. I need to get a jab, right, for travel. I've got family who live abroad, that kind of stuff. But I mean, even the medics are saying, look, give it your best shot. If you've got a vaccination coming up, stop eating rubbish and alcohol and that kind of stuff in the lead up to it. So yeah, so really health, and you do feel a lot better, and that's really it. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound too vain in that one mustn't obsess about weight loss. But yeah, losing 1.5 stone is great. Years ago, I was in the forces, and to pass your tests, you had to carry a backpack weighing, 30 or 40 pounds. Well, I was carrying that kind of a thing around when I got up in the morning, wondering why I felt so dreadful by lunchtime. But that's gone. So I'm kind of skipping along here,
Cheers, Andy.
Feeling much better.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That's good. We'll take a wee shift here and go to you, Bridget. Is that okay? Cystic variant and stuff. So Bridget, tell us a wee bit about your journey into this and your whys and your what's it's.
Yeah. I would say sort of early last year, I decided that it was time to lose weight. That's what I decided to do. But round about that time, I was getting work done in the house. I was getting a new kitchen. I was getting walls taken down. I was converting stuff. And then lockdown hit. Yeah. And the workmen left. So I was left with a cooker and a sink. Wow. So I thought, right, okay, there's absolutely no point in even kidding myself on here that I can do anything, because I wasn't cooking properly. The house is like a bomb site. You know, if I was hungry, I was eating a sandwich. But again, it was Ivor Cummings. Listen to him. I also watched the video he did with the GAA football teams.
Yes.
And that really opened my eyes. Yeah. I thought, right, okay, this is definitely the way I want to go. But again, I knew what the time wasn't right. So I really started keto in October. Bread, I love it. It does not love me. No. Absolutely not. Yeah. Once I started keto, I lost the acid reflux. And as a result of that, I lost cough, I lost fluid retention, I also lost 3.5 stone.
Wow.
And I'm not going to tell you my starting weight, but I lost 3.5 stone. I was good over Christmas. I was determined I wasn't going to break it over Christmas. But in January, I did, just for a few days. And that few days turned into a week.
Yes.
And then I got back onto it. But I tell you, it's hard. It's really hard. The cravings, I mean, I never was a chocolate fan, never. But give me wine gums or jellies, absolutely. But when I fell off the wagon, trying to get back onto keto, it was chocolate that I was craving. So much so, I mean, I'm fortunate, I live alone. So anything that's in the house, it's not good. I mean, I don't have to bring anything in. In the boot of my car at the moment is biscuits for visitors, because I know I won't go out to the boot of the car to get them. Yeah. So, but once I'm back really in it and in a right good place, I can have all that stuff in the house and it won't bother me. It won't bother me, because the cravings will have gone. So that's basically me. And yeah, I started off wanting to lose weight, but then I think it became more important was the metabolic health. My mum is type 1 diabetic. Heart conditions run right through my family, so does cancer. Yeah. And I thought, right, no, I'm a prime candidate to get this and to get it bad. So I thought, right, no, I'm not prepared to do that. So it was, yes, losing weight, but definitely metabolic health took over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful for your contribution. It's interesting because we're always going to have a mix. It's a wide, I keep using the phrase, it's a wide church, this. So you've got the likes of Andy there who feels he can sort of dig into a bowl of pasta from time to time or get a fish supper or something, who knows. And yes, some people can, but others like yourself, Bridget, might not be able to do that so easily. We seem to hear that a lot, you know, that some of us might just trigger a response again. It's almost like we're addicted to the low carb the carbs, processed, and particularly sugar. And so if you indulge in it, you can get lost for a while. And I'm really grateful for you sharing that, and the fact that it's not easy to get back on the saddle again. It's, for some people, that seems to be the case. And I know if I want to indulge in a pie supper, that would be good as well. A fish supper or something, gluten-free one, which you can get down here. Yeah, I can do it. I'm not going to feel great, but I can just go straight back into the lifestyle. So that's good. So, David, tell us a wee bit about your journey then. How did you get into it and what's been happening?
Sure. I would say, Jack, that I've always been interested in health generally. If I go back to when I was 19 years old, my father died of a heart attack when I was only 19. He was 53, which is, is pretty young, very young, in fact. And then, and his mother had subsequently or previously died at 60 of a heart attack. So heart disease was in the family. My mother died at 60 of cancer when I was 25. So you're losing your parents way too young. But really, since my father died, I'd always been interested in keeping myself healthy. And that's when I started. I was one of the first runners of the Glasgow Marathon. And, I was always keeping myself fit through football, as they call it here, soccer. I would, it was just amateur, but, as you get different degrees of amateur football, as you know. And I was training like 2 or 3 times a week. And then, through my 20s, when I've been married twice. When my first marriage, babies come along and, you don't get as much leisure time as you would like. And I always had this continual battle with when I needed to lose weight, I would just train like crazy. I was a binge trainer. And of course then, and I like you, Jack, I think I was a vegetarian for 10 years. But you quite rightly term it a granarian, because that's what I was doing. I was like, I was eating my Alpen and my porridge and all the things, and nutty bread and brown pasta, brown rice, the stuff that you think is actually good for you. and I'd have to train like crazy to get any weight off. And and I was a pretty good runner. I was doing sub 40 10Ks, and I would get up to a point where I if I needed to lose weight, I just train like crazy. And this kind of perpetual battle between exercising more and eating less to lose weight that's gone on for decades, even to the point where I came to Canada and it was the same thing. But then as you get older and you start to get other symptoms, and Bridget, you had mentioned it. I had heartburn. My heartburn wasn't so much reflux; it was more real chest pain, which was concerning for me because I was worried that I was going to be having a heart attack. So I would fairly regularly get my blood work done, and that's where the first markers come up and say, okay, and my markers would be pretty decent. They always go on about LDL being the thing that you want to keep low because that's really bad. And if it goes high, you're going to die and all this kind of thing. And the HDL, the one you want higher, I could never seem to get it higher. And I had a defining moment, and I think it's worth sharing this, is that I was actually in the throes of training for a very important relay race here called the Cabot Trail Relay Race. It's a 24-hour thing, and everyone runs a leg of between 17 and 20 kilometers. And you train very hard for it. And I went along to the doctor because I was troubled with this acid reflux or heartburn. And basically he had said to me, okay, we've looked at your blood work. Your HDL needs to be higher. So what I'm going to ask you you need to do more exercise and eat more green leafy vegetables. And I'm like, I'm running 60 to 70 kilometers a week. And this was when I was in my early 50s. What do you want me to do? This is nuts. So that was a real defining moment for me. So I thought, what's going on here? And I started to look into alternatives, before COVID, but it was really when COVID hit. That was another moment for me that said, what can I do to make sure I get my weight down? Because I'd always struggled with that. And like you, Andy, I mean, I'm a bit taller. I'm 6 foot, but I was up at the 215 pounds. I've just converted that for you guys. It's 15 stone 5. That's heavy for a 6 foot guy, but I carried it well because I was always a fairly kind of muscly guy, and I could still run with that weight. But I thought, why am I doing this? This is crazy. I need to figure out a way of getting it sorted. So when COVID hit, and I know this name's come up with both of you, and is Ivor Cummins, I think, was the one that really nailed it for me, because I was thinking myself, how do I protect myself from this? And the fear and anxiety thing was an issue, particularly here in North America. It was insane. I would say even more so here because there was all this polarity in terms of the political statements that were getting made as well, and you never knew what the truth was. So I really struggled with that. So when I think Ivor was, and I said, don't quote me on this, but I think he said something around the lines of the whole notion of hiding away from a virus didn't make sense to him. So I thought, well, okay, what can you do? So it would appear that in most cases, like anything else, like the flu or the cold, is if you can boost your immune system, if you can have the strongest immune system possible, there's less chance of you getting that. That struck a chord with me because that made absolute sense. And so then I thought to myself, so how can we do that? And that's when you started sort of morphing, Jack, from it being a fear and anxiety thing to let's make ourselves healthy as possible, using some other techniques. And I went through the journey with the tapping and the various other things. But and we'll talk about some of the other real impact speakers you had on in a little bit. But that was really the defining moment for me, is when COVID hit and thought, what can I do? And then as I started to say, okay, what's this keto thing all about? What do I have to cut out? And as you said, Bridget, cut out bread, cut out pasta, cut out rice. There's a good start, right?
Yeah.
That's a very good start. Seed oils, cut them out. And then what I realized was, hang on a minute, I don't have to run 100K this week. And my weight's coming down and I'm feeling better.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is the key. This is definitely. And then I couldn't get enough of information. And I started to search out, further talks from Eric Westman and Professor Tim Noakes, all of that. And then it all started to hit me so hard, thinking, oh my goodness, why is this information not being out to the world before now? It's almost criminal, because I just need to turn on the TV right now and watch 3 or 4 ads on diabetes drugs and all the other things that are going to supposedly counteract these side effects of living the life that you're living, which is obesity, diabetes, type 1, type 2, and all the other things. So
cheers, David.
So that's where I am, Jack.
Good man, good man. Well, look, what we'll do is we'll get into maybe some of the other speakers. Let's just go back to maybe what Bridget was kind of leading us into for a moment there. Bridget, do you want to? I want you all to do it, but maybe we'll start with you, Bridget. Do you want to just share some of the, and maybe the others can be thinking about it, some of the, I'm just going to call them symptoms of our normal lifestyle that we had before we discovered this, that you notice once you make this transition, however well you do it, that they're no longer impact. You did mention heartburn and I certainly, that just disappeared immediately. It's never come back. But I was constantly challenged by that stuff because I was a grenadian, like David suggested. So, Bridget, what sort of things have you noticed that have got better or seem to have gone away as a result of your transition?
Well, I think the big thing for me is the acid reflux.
Yeah.
I had a cough for years and years and years. Everybody knew when Bridget was around, there was a cough. You heard me before you saw me. Never ever could get to the bottom of it. And I was aware that I was having acid reflux, especially if I ate a lot of bread, which I loved. I absolutely loved it. And it was easy. And I cared for my husband when he was really, really ill for years. So it was, I was looking after him, thinking I was cooking him healthy meals. But a lot of the time I didn't have time for myself, so grab a sandwich, and that went on for years and years and years. So, and literally within a week of actually being right on into keto, the acid reflux went. Yeah. The cough took a wee bit longer, and it was just one day I suddenly realised I don't have a cough anymore. I thought, well, brilliant. The other things which happened really quickly was fluid retention went. I mean, I'm talking about, I used to have legs swollen right up to my ankles. Wow. That was my standard. That was it. Yeah. Completely gone. Obviously couldn't get rings on fingers. All that's completely gone. And that all went, and that left again really, really quickly. And there was something that was mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I hadn't really thought about at the time. The brain fog. Yeah. Absolutely. See, when you sit there and you think back on that, you thought, oh, without a doubt, brain fog, thinking much more clearly, much more energy. Yeah. I can go out long walks now. I mean, I could always walk, but don't ask me to walk up a hill. Oh, I would be exhausted, couldn't breathe. Now it's not a problem. Absolutely not a problem. And again, something else that was mentioned, I think it was just last week, the week before, about sensitivity in your teeth and gums. Yes. And I've always had a problem with that, always, and I don't have anymore. So there's things that are coming out that I thought, oh, that's true, that has really happened. And one thing I'm really looking forward to trying is I take medication to prevent migraines. Right. And again, one of your speakers was talking about that. So I'm hoping in the next couple of months, I'm going to try and wean myself off that and see what happens. So I think it's there. But yeah, it's been major for me, major.
Yeah. I mean, I before we go into those, it's just that thing about you don't, the brain fog thing amazed me. I had no idea I had such a thing. I thought it was cool. Suddenly go boom, because somebody said, "Is this blue sky thing?" You're going, "What? Where was that all my life?"
Yeah.
And as you say, quite within a week, within days even, it starts to manifest. So thanks for Bridget. That's fantastic. Just brilliant. And we might repeat them as we go through. But Andy, what about yourself then? What have you noticed that's come and gone?
Yeah. I'd pick up on what Bridget said. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism.
Wow.
This is a few years ago now, and it means your thyroid doesn't function properly, and it slows your metabolic rate down. So you're always feeling a bit tired. You get brain fog. You're not very well, and they give you a pill to sort of stimulate it, and that does help, sure. But since getting into low carb, high fat, ketogenic dieting and losing this weight, it's got better. And now, as I lost weight, I saw a video on YouTube, a woman who reduced her levothyroxine. This is the drug you take to alleviate it, her medication, because she'd lost so much weight. And I wasn't sleeping very well. So I sort of worked out this thing's keeping me awake. So after I'd lost about a stone, I reduced the medication by, I'm trying to do the maths, by about 20%. I didn't dare go into the GP surgery to get tested in case I picked something up. So I'll do that in the end, I guess. So I reduced the medication. The brain fog's gone. I feel a lot better. And the reason I sort of bring this up is I know the people watching this with hypothyroidism, diabetes, cancer, and so on, and you think, well, it can't work for me. But I did this with hypothyroidism. One of the things people say is, look, if you've got a thyroid condition, you need a bit of glucose to kick it off working. And that's nonsense. Your liver, I think Ivor mentioned this as well. Your liver produces glucose, so you don't really need to start, eating a bit of bread or chocolate or something. That's just crazy. I sort of accept that now. So yeah, I found a great. I'd also like to say I found it easy in that you just get used to this method of eating, and I gave up alcohol completely some years ago. I'm not bothered with that at all. And sugar, in the same kind of way, you just kind of learn to do without it. So I've got kids here, because we're all stuck here because of COVID, and they'll eat chocolate or have a glass of whiskey at night and that kind of stuff. But it doesn't sort of bother me. It doesn't occur to me to eat it really. So yeah, even stuff which is quite serious like hypothyroidism, it's actually the way to go. And I think that the great trick that the health guys are missing is the fact you put the population on not eating excessive carbohydrates, and bang, a load of the other stuff is just, I'm being a mind store positivist about this, but I think it would just kind of evaporate, and that it certainly worked for me. So yeah, no more brain fog. Stop me if I'm repeating myself.
We had the budget last week. If any of the four of us was running the budget, we would know what to do. Just get people to change what they're eating, and you save a fortune, and you can spend money in all sorts of good things, but they don't get it. So David, what about what's coming going for you? What have you noticed?
Yeah, well, I'd mentioned the biggest one for me, I think similar to Bridget, was heartburn or acid reflux. I used to get really trouble with that at night. And as I said, mine was more concerning because it was like chest pain. It was almost as though you're thinking you're having a heart attack. But I knew it was heartburn because I'd get up in the middle of the night and take heartburn medication, and it almost immediately go away. So I knew that, and when I went to for the blood tests, and I went for a stress test of my heart and all that, and it was all fine. So I kind of knew that was it. So getting rid of that, and I think in addition to that, I had sleep apnea, which is waking up in the middle of the night like gasping for breath because you've actually stopped breathing, and that can add stress to the heart as well, as you know. So that wasn't a good situation, and that's been the biggest ones for me for sure. A couple of other, and of course the weight thing, which is now just so groundbreaking because I can now lose weight without having to run 100 miles, and it's much better, and I still keep fit, but it's so I've come down from 15 stone 5 to I'm just over 13 stone now, just like you, Andy, and feeling great. So that's fantastic. So the weight was another big one. Another kind of smaller thing, they were never really an issue, but I had these, what they call lipomas, which are little fatty deposits just under the skin, little lumps. And of course you think, oh, what's that? But I got them checked out and they were just little fatty deposits. I was told never to worry about them, but some of them are a little bit unsightly, like, what's that lump in your arm or whatever. I even got one surgically removed when I was in Scotland. Yeah. And interestingly, since I've gone on low carb, some of them have completely disappeared, and the larger ones are just kind of, they're just going in they're just disappearing. Some of them haven't gone completely, but I maybe about 20 or 30 throughout my body. You can't really see them, but they're there when you push your skin. Some of them have gone completely, so that was a great thing. And when I took the dog out and for a walk in the mornings, I kind of got up early, take the dog for a walk. I used to have before keto, I used to have a bowl of porridge, like you, Andy. I love your porridge. I have a bowl of porridge. And then I realized, because you're thinking that's healthy, right? You think that's fantastic. Like, I'm going to get that in my body. I take the dog for a walk. By the time I got to the waterfall, which is about a 2-kilometer walk, I would be all sweaty and like shaky. And I'm thinking, what is that? I knew there was a glucose imbalance somewhere, a sugar rush of some sort, but I never really associated it with porridge oats, because you're thinking, surely there's no sugar in there, but you don't really you're not really trained to do the chemistry behind it all. So that was another one. All those kind of sweaty moments where you're shaking and feeling kind of generally unwell, entirely gone. So it's been a great journey for me.
It's a good way to. It's an interesting point you've raised there, because unless like some of the guests we've had, like Eric Westman being your actual sort of family doctor, a lot of us have got to sort of tiptoe through this on our own, because you sit with your doctor and he probably knows nothing about it by and large, and would be frightened of you, for example, coming off, Andy, slowly but surely, these important drugs that they believe they should give us. So it is a bit of a lonely thing at times. So maybe to help people viewing or watching, what about the early phase of actually going in? Did you just sort of dive in and you were kind of sticking to it rigidly for the first few weeks, or did you slide in? Did you meet some of those things that, the reason why I created that cooking thing for a while, it's just to help people over their fears. Oh God, I'm going to miss a pizza. Well, no, you wouldn't necessarily. I think you probably, as I think Andy's indicated, down you get into it a wee bit. Or it was yourself, Bridget. You might have that food in your house. You're not going to go and open the cupboard to find it. It's, you kind of lose your awareness of it. You don't need it. But in the beginning, so did any of you? So maybe come back to yourself, Bridget. Was there anything you found as you were coming into it that you thought you had to sort of plan for? Think you might need the bread. Did you cook some alternative bread stuff or bake it, or and what else did you find that you were kind of having to deal with in that early phase?
I just went straight into it. Again, as I said, I live on my own. I was able to get rid of all the stuff I didn't want to eat, and shopping, just bringing in stuff that I knew was just keto. Yeah. I know from years ago, I always need to have protein with a meal.
Yeah.
Always. I mean, if I went to a diet club or anything like that, and they would say like toast and banana, yeah, that's fine. I'd be starving an hour later. So I always knew I needed to have protein on my plate. So that wasn't a huge issue for me. I never was a cereal girl. Never interested me. Porridge, rice, Kellogg's cornflakes, anything like that, forget it. So I went straight in, and actually I was fine with it. I never got, I mean, I know people talk about keto flu and they get all sorts of other symptoms. I was really lucky. I didn't. However, when I fall off the wagon and try to get back into it, yeah, I do. I mean, I can get headaches, just feel out of sorts. Yeah. But again, as long as, I mean, I know if you persevere, a couple of days and it's gone. Yeah. A couple of days and it's gone. But for me, diving straight into it was the best way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I do find that I become highly sensitive. It's like I'm finely tuned with it. So because of again, I've mentioned this, but because of this cooking thing, I've been cooking. I mean, I need to put another post up. But the thing is, I've been cooking stuff I normally wouldn't, and baking things I normally wouldn't eat now. But so I'm having, for example, almond flour. Yeah, I've been eating, and as you probably know, it's full of, what is it called, isolates, whatever they call them. I'm having reaction. I'm getting sort of pain in my knees. And where does this come? Where's this coming from? And I know where it's coming from. It's just I'm so finely tuned. If I go anywhere that's slightly dodgy, I'm going to have some issues. So that's good that you dived in and got through it. But you do know, and I'm glad you're sharing it for people. I mean, we all give ourselves permission, I suspect, to occasionally treat ourselves and come off the wagon, as it were. But it isn't always easy to get back on for some people. Yeah. I'm glad you're sharing that. I find it effortless, but I'm lucky that way. Yeah.
And you've been doing it for much longer.
Pardon?
You've been doing it for much longer.
Yes,
as well.
Exactly. And I'm 5 years or more or less there. And I think you become finely tuned. I think you do. And any little bit, either way, look at that. You almost sense it immediately. So, Andy, what about yourself? Anything that you needed to prepare yourself for did you dive in or did you slide in? What happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, I dove in pretty quickly, simply out of this reason of fear when the COVID pandemic got going. And I do think you have to have a reason to do something. I remember years ago, I used to drink like a fish. I make no secret of that. And I got gout one New Year's Eve. Yeah. Which even in Hereford, we make a good celebration of it. And I thought I'd broken my foot running, you see. And I went into my wife ran me to the hospital in Hereford the next day. And this guy, who's a West African fellow, about, as tall as David, I think. And he said, "You've got gout." And I said, "Don't be ridiculous." I was about to say, "Don't be ridiculous." But he wasn't the sort of bloke you would argue with, And he said, "The blood test will confirm it." And he said, "Do you eat a lot of shellfish?" And I said, "Well, no, I had a lobster in about 1983, I think." And he said, "Do you like a drink?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And we both looked at each other. I knew that was the reason. Well, I have to say, it took me a couple of spectacular false starts, but I gave up drink completely and I've never touched it since. Yeah. And you have to have a reason to do that. And which is a roundabout way of saying, I looked at this COVID-19 thing and thought, I do not want to catch this thing. We didn't know there was going to be a vaccine then. So, I got straight into it. I found, in answer to how easy was it, I'm living in a household with 3 other people. My wife's a vegetarian. Her idea of a good meal is pasta and rice with vegetables heaps on top. But it's a kind of marriage where 9 times out of 10 we can sort of compromise. So she has all that and I just have a steak and we both have part of the salad, you see. Yeah. So it kind of works. I found that great. I mean, yes, I discovered nut flour, which is like almond flour, but it's ground up about half a dozen nuts in Hereford, £2 a packet. Wow. So I started making really good keto bread this week on that. I have to say I put a bit too much bicarb soda in the one I had for lunch. Yeah. So if you get some odd sound effects, it's down to me, not David or Bridget. It's been good, and it is easier than I think perhaps a lot of people realise. I did have this reaction of feeling really terrible to start with, and one tip I was given was bolster your electrolytes, get some electrolyte powder, and just drink that. I mean, it tastes horrible, but drink it with some water, and that will restore your balance. I don't know whether that's psychosomatic or whatever, but that works for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just if someone gets, from what I can gather, certainly I did it, if you get Himalayan pink salt or something and just take a wee bit of that even on your tongue, and I never had any of these side effects at the beginning. So, but anyway. And David, what about yourself? Anything you prepared yourself with, or you noticed did you dive in or did you slide in?
Yeah, I was like Bridget. I dove straight in there. I basically decided, okay, I've got to do this. Now, I didn't have a clearing out of cupboards. I mean, I live with my wife and I've got 2 teenage boys, and you know, sometimes I think you've lost your mind because you know, you're onto something. But you know, I did try substituting almond flour, but like you, Jack, you know, it just I didn't think. I thought to myself, you know, I don't really need to do this. I was never a bread baker or anything like that anyway, so I just I did substitute that for some things. Coated some, instead of using something that was breadcrumbs, I'd use a version of almond flour, but it just became too much work. So with the family, basically, I just because there's always meat or some sort there, I just substituted the potatoes or the rice or whatever with you know, cauliflower mash, which is a big favorite of mine. You know, and then the boys started to love that too, because you know, you mash it up with real butter and it tastes fantastic. And so you know, I did all of that. So now I participate in the family meals, but usually I've just shoved aside any of the carby stuff and replaced it with low carb or keto stuff. But yeah, I went straight in there, and it was fantastic. One of the I did as a little bit of an experiment, and I do this as an experiment. I thought to myself, I wonder what would happen if I just carbed up. Because another thing you learn as a runner is, in fact, you can pick up a million books that'll tell you to carb load before you go for a run. And and I would have I think about 6 months ago, I thought I'll have some granola or muesli or whatever you want to call it. And almost immediately the next day, I started to sneeze. So and one thing I hadn't mentioned, my hay fever symptoms are another thing that disappeared.
Brilliant.
And the next morning, I'm sneezing because, and I'm thinking, there you are. That's the start of it. It'll just start to come back. I was just curious as to know what the first thing that would come back. And then I got a little bit of heartburn, and I thought, there you go. This is just this is what happens. So I just my experiment was over very abruptly, and I was back on keto. So so I went straight into it, and I don't see me falling off the wagon at all. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think, but I suppose, and you said it, David, you started watching, reading, listening to all sorts of stuff that would support it. You widened your awareness of it, which I put thousands of hours in. I find it fascinating. Even just walking the dog at lunchtime, one of the podcasts, just unbelievable stuff. It's still constantly expanding the benefits. You know, it's just unreal, actually. So thinking about the year we've been through, and if we've been visiting on the Wednesday night and stuff, what kind of speakers, or who particularly sort of opened your mind a little bit and caused you to be intrigued by something? We've all mentioned, obviously, Ivor. Ivor's just a giant in the field because he does all that research, and he's bold and wonderful in terms of what he's up to. But there were others as well that came and went. I mean, I honestly, I've never used shampoo or used soap in the shower since Alvin Dannenberg said don't do it. I brush my teeth with coconut oil and some bicarbonate of soda. You know, no one's noticed. People aren't standing, well, they can't get close to me, but my wife hasn't noticed. She's not saying you're stinking or something, you know, it's just not happening. And yes, the teeth thing, you know, it's like, I used to use that Sensodyne toothpaste, for God's sake. Don't need it. Wouldn't even, you know, so it's interesting. So who particularly inspired you? Bridget, who can you think of that has an impact on you?
Well, actually, I sat last night in preparation for this, and I look back on some of your speakers, and it's amazing how some of them you forget. But Belinda, Fetke and Gary, Oh, without a doubt. I mean, they were just amazing. I had listened to them on podcasts as well before, and they're just fantastic. Yeah. And then I've got a wee list here: Rob Saunders, Eric Westman, Amy Berger, of course, Alvin Danberg, Kirsten Bayer.
Yes.
About the migraines,
wasn't she?
Yeah, she was amazing. And then Dale Drury and David Harper.
Yes.
They were, because I've got that book, the Bio Diet book, which is excellent. Got to say. And as well as you're speaking, also I listen to sort of podcasts and things like that. So like Paul Saladino, the Low Carb MD, Jimmy Moore, the Keto Dudes. I like the Diet Doctor website.
Yes.
But I don't like his podcast. I don't like his voice. I can't listen to his voice. And it's fantastic. His website is brilliant. I've got to say that, but no, he's not for me to listen to. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's what happens. I suppose you get your favourites, don't you? And you stick with them. In fact, the Low Carb MD podcast, the one I've just finished listening to at lunchtime, is absolutely amazing. Full of geeky stuff, but there's some really interesting, and I'll mention it tomorrow night for everyone, in terms of our longevity and our sort of lifespan. Really, really exciting stuff there. So, Andy, what about yourself? Who inspired you and why?
Yeah, I'm afraid I haven't researched this at all. I'm just frantically trying to remember. The big one for me was, apart from Ivor, who's a huge debt to, really. And I don't know, Bridget, I like his accent.
Oh,
you know, I've got to tell you, the reason I got into self-development, when I started reading about it, it's a field that's full of Americans. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to take any notice of this. And then I saw on the back of your book, Jack, that you were from Cumbernauld, just up the road from East Kilbride, where some of my folks are from. And I thought, I'll give this guy a go. And I've got to be honest with you, the fact that you were speaking in this Scottish English, it was great. I thought, I can believe this then, you know. So I mean, I've tried to be a bit more objective with people like Tony Robbins or whatever ever since. Tim Noakes I thought was great, South African accent, so I could just about get away with that. And he sat there saying, all I do is eat steak. Well, I live in Herefordshire, right, which with all due respect to Aberdeen Angus, is the best beef in the world. In fact, we've got a herd of Aberdeen Angus at the farm just over the way from me. So, I sort of vacillate between the two of them. And I don't think I've ever eaten quite so much red meat in the last 20 years. Like I say, my wife's a vegetarian and sort of looks aghast with this and said, you know, how much does this stuff cost? And I try and sort of do some fancy arithmetic. But he was saying he just eats meat and does a bit of lettuce as well. Well, okay, we started growing lettuce. But also I was intrigued by what he said about running. And that he talks about hydration and overhydration and the fact that you shouldn't carb load. And if you look into the running world, there's a rake of people like Scott Jurek and Chris McDougall, the guy who wrote about the barefoot runners in Mexico. These guys actually don't eat a lot of carbohydrates. The guys who run barefoot for hundreds of miles in Mexico, the Tarahumara Indians, they don't actually live on a lot of carbohydrates. So even historically, this kind of thing is being borne out by what we would term, you know, new discoveries. It's not new at all. No. If you look back at prehistoric man, they're chasing after one wildebeest or you know, deer, running it down after 100 miles or so, and they're just eating the meat. They're not, they might eat a bit of fruit, I suppose, but, you know, it all started to go wrong when we started like cultivating animals and growing cereal crops. I just hope to goodness I can't be overheard here in Herefordshire coming out with that. But stick to eating meat. So Tim Noakes, very inspirational, a great guy and a great comfort to runners all over the world, I'd say.
Absolutely. I think mentioning both Fetkes and our South African friend, the battles they went through with the authorities, really quite shocking. It opened your eyes, and it's what I suppose it's, without getting caught up in it again, it's like if you put the hours in and you've listened to and read the books, and then when COVID comes along, why should I believe you about that when you've been telling us lies for 60 years? and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, we'll not go there. David, what about yourself then? Who inspired you and why?
Yeah, well, you've mentioned the giants, and I have to say, like the others on the panel here, I would say that the Professor Tim Noakes story was so compelling for me. Like, and when you dig in a little bit further, and you see what he had to go through, not just him but his family, for such a highly respected scientist and doctor to go through what he went through over one tweet, and then having to end up being faced with a trial in front of all of those people that were out to get him. That really made me think, what is this about? Who's driving all of these opinions? And then when you dig deeper and you see how much the drug industry is influencing the medical training, and how much the food industries are influencing the dietary guidelines, it really is an eye-opening moment. And so on the back of that, but I've always, and maybe it's the same with others, like the fact that Professor Tim Noakes was such a fantastic scientist with so many letters after his name you could hardly count them. And then Dr. Eric Westman was the guy who was a real kind of family doctor.
Yeah.
And I guess it's been since I was a child, you always wanted to think, okay, he's a real doctor. So I really need to listen to this guy. And when you go into his podcasts as well, and some of his presentations that are online, he's so natural, so authentic. Yeah. There's no agenda there. It's just, please listen to this. Yes. You know, carbs are killing people. and you know, that's the underlying message. But yeah, so there's that. The Fetkes again. I mean, I found Belinda so endearing, and also Gary. He was quite funny, actually. I thought he was quite funny. And because his story, he would make the more serious elements kind of amusing for him, because he was so confident about what he was talking about. And that was fantastic. I do listen to the Saladino podcast from time to time. But Jack, I'm sure you'd appreciate, sometimes he gets really heavy into doctor talk. Yeah. And I'm really struggling to find out, to pick pieces from that. Yeah. Jimmy Moore's very good at dumbing that down. But these people, and I'm going to use that word again, authenticity. Yeah. The authenticity really does come through Dr. Eric Westman's voice. Yeah. I'm an audio guy like you, Jack, and it's just so fantastic. And so these are the big ones. Having said that, the story, the 3-part interview you had with what's his name? Is it the periodontist?
Al Garenberg.
Yes, that was fantastic. Like that story of him, how he recovered from. The guy was nearly dead, you know, just unbelievable, and just came back. In a hospice, and and then is able to come and sit in front of you when no one had given him the 6 months to live. Yeah. So anyway, these are great stories. So I love this journey, because there's so much more to find out about how good this can be. And I hope that through it all, that the conversation around COVID and everything else changes from how many drugs can we put in your body to fix you, to what's the real conversation here? Yeah. Who's getting sick? People who are overweight and people who are metabolically challenged. Yeah. So how do we deal with that? And that's the bigger conversation that everybody needs to be having, is like, how can we make people healthy to boost their immune systems, to prevent them from getting sick when something like this comes along, because it's going to come along again. Yeah. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah. Andy, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, how can we convince the medical profession to actually act on this? I'd gone for one of these blood tests 2 or 3 years ago, And it wasn't my normal GP. There was this a lady GP, and she said, "Oh, I'll just check your blood pressure." And she said, "Oh, it's a bit high. I mean, it's great now. It's a bit high." And she said, I just wonder whether we should start you on something. And I've got a phobia. Well, I don't like the idea of having medication at all. I mean, I do the hypothyroid thing, but you don't want to stack up these various pills. So I said, "Oh, give us a few months and we'll test it again." Oh, okay. I didn't hear any more about it. But yeah, their default position is stick you on a drug. Whereas she should have said to me, "Look, you look a bit fat to me. Lose a couple of stone."
Yeah.
And she was a drop dead gorgeous looking Irish woman, actually. So I would have said, "Yeah, whatever you say, I'll just do it," But no, I just sort of staggered out of there thinking, "Oh my God, more pills," Yeah. But thanks to what you've been doing to Ivor Cummings, the people we've discussed, it's the only way to go. We could save the health services of Canada, America, whatever, billions really, if they just sort of stopped eating carbohydrates excessively.
It's a great point. I mean, I think the biggest thing, apart from what we could save all our health services around the world, particularly the NHS here, is the fact that what about the lives that each of us and our families have lost early? Parents dying young, brothers or sisters or whatever, serious disease, friends. It's shocking, really, and what we now know is it's so simple. It's actually frightening. It was so simple. But one of the other things I'd like to just explore on behalf of people watching who might be thinking of jumping in or sliding in is, how did you cope with getting over the sort of brainwashing we had for 50 or 60 years, depending on your age, about fat? How did you cope with? I mean, people get if you go into it with a diet in your head, and we keep saying it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle, but you maybe hear keto diet. So immediately you put, that means exercise, that means cutting back and stuff, that means certainly, low fat. How did you cope with the fact that it was actually the opposite? You were going to actually eat fat, protein moderate, more fat than normal, even saturated fat, and very little carb. How did you get on with that part of it, that just understanding that? So Bridget, how did you cope with that stuff?
For me, it was actually quite easy. If I was to have a steak, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't cut the fat off it. Even before I was doing keto, I'm sorry. To me, it's the best bit of the steak. I mean, to the horror of my family, I have to say. And I still maintain the best part of a chicken is the nicely roasted skin. Yes. Sorry, but that's me. I'll eat that first and leave the rest of the chicken if I could. Plus, years and years and years ago, I did sort of dabble with the Atkins diet.
Yes.
No, it didn't sort of work at the time, and that was fine. But the one thing I took away from that was the lower the fat, the higher the sugar.
Yes.
And for that reason, I sort of always avoided low-fat stuff. So making the transition, I mean, I'm not saying it was really easy, but making the transition to eating more fat, it wasn't that difficult for me. Yeah. It definitely wasn't. Okay. I mean, the family were horrified. Some of them are still horrified, but I don't care. I can prove it. And plus, again, like the butter thing. Again, it was when my husband was ill. I stopped eating the low-fat spreads, the stuff that they say was good for you. I'm sorry, I went to butter. I thought, you know what, it tastes nice. Again, try to make nice things for him. I thought toast with a wee bit, I know bread, but toast with nice butter on it tastes so much better. So I went, and I've been using butter for years and years and years. So it wasn't that difficult for me. Good.
That's fantastic. It's good you mentioned Atkins, because a way back, I mean, obviously when I was standing in stages and you're up for, 9 in the morning till 6 at night or whatever, and you're doing it 2 days, 3 days, 4 days in a row, depending what the client was or what was doing. When Atkins came along, that just made sense to me because I wanted to have lots of energy and look sort of sharp. And then I was going back and forth to Canada a lot, fun enough, to Toronto and business and so on, and elsewhere in Canada. And what they had over there, which didn't have here, was you had these food stores that would sell you Atkins bars. you know, and I was literally taking suitcases of Atkins bars back. And of course, that's what's happened to the keto thing. We've got keto bars and none of these things are really healthy. You know, it's like the food industry's because, oh, there's another opportunity. Let's dive in and monetize all of that. So I foolishly thought I was doing the whole thing about Atkins, but I was really eating stupid bars, you know, with all the wrong stuff in it. But anyway, what about yourself, David, for a moment? How did you find that getting over the fat psychology? You know, how did you go on that?
Well, you're asked how I cope with it. So I would say that I'm coping with it. And one of the reasons that I found it reasonably easy was to go into this high fat diet was completely alien to me. I was always like, ooh, you know, I would, unlike Bridget, I would cut the fat off my bacon and my steaks, and because I was conditioned to believe that was healthy. Yeah. And you know, even when I saw some meats with you know, these processed meats you get with little bits of fat in them, I would steer clear of them and all that, and I wouldn't go near it. So when I went on to the low carb high fat, I was introducing a lot of this. It was very uncomfortable for me, very uncomfortable. And it wasn't just for me. My wife, who's actually in the healthcare sector, she was getting concerned because, of course, I was dealing with all these other things like pains in my chest, and then all of a sudden, oh, I know what I'm going to do, darling. I'm going to start eating fat, and she's freaking out. But one of the great things is, and it's only happened recently, I don't go for blood work that often, but in the last 2 months, and I should have mentioned this previously, in the last it was like 6 weeks ago, I went for my blood work, and that was going to be the big defining moment, the big kind of drum roll moment for my wife to say, I told you, you're going to die. She knew I was losing weight, and a lot of other symptoms were dropping off. And then when I saw that, my markers were the best they've ever been. My HDL has finally come up to a level that is actually the best it's ever been. Yeah. And that was with running less and eating more. Yeah. So it was the complete opposite from what the doctor had advised me to do. So as I've been going along, I knew I was feeling healthier. I knew that some of these other things were starting to subside, these medical conditions that I had, not serious, but serious enough that I noticed they were disappearing. So that for me was the motivation for me to keep going, because I knew something really positive was happening to my body. Yeah. So, but when I say coping, Jack, I still, you know, when I've got bacon, or I'm putting like, we call it whipping cream here, but I think over there you call it double cream in my tea, and it's glooping out there, and I'm stirring it in, and it says, here's the fat content on this, and it's like 35% fat, and you're like, okay, a little bit more of that will do me fine. And then you have your tea, but it's lovely and it's working. And now I think I mentioned this in an email to you, Jack, that my LDL did increase a little. Yeah. What they consider acceptable here is 3.5. Mine's at 3.7. Yeah. And when I explained to my doctor my diet, funnily enough, he's got an open mind, and he said, look, whatever you're doing, these are the best blood results you've ever had. Your triglycerides are fantastic. Your HDL's up, and you're only 0.2 over your LDL. Just keep an eye on that it doesn't go through the roof. But I can't remember whose podcast it was. I think it was Ivor Cummings that suggested that an increase in LDL is good for your immune system. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what LDL means. So I'm thinking that I'm trusting these guys who have given me so much good information that when they start talking about all the lipids and all the other things that are going on, that a little raise in my LDL is a good thing for my immune system and my metabolic thing. So
thanks for bringing. I think I'm grateful for you bringing that up, because the whole cholesterol thing is one of the biggest lies of all time.
Right.
And that's one of the huge things. So again, if anyone's frightened of the fat and or the whole thing about cholesterol, Ivor Cummins is your source. There's endless podcasts. He talks about it. Paul Saladino, they're all there. And we don't, it's the sort of thing you need to take Ivor Cummins' book along to your doctor and say, you're going to read that, or any of the other great books that we've interviewed the authors of over the last year. But back to yourself, Andy. What about yourself? Did you have a condition that you've been dealing with for a while? How did you find embracing fat? Was it hard to get into it, or did you just dive into that as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, the same conditioning. Fat is bad. You shouldn't be eating fat. Pare the fat off your meat and all that kind of thing. And don't eat butter. So, I mean, a lot of pleasure in saying, sod that. I'm just going to eat all the fat I can. I worked for some years as a journalist, and you kind of develop this sixth sense to question a consensus. Yeah. And to do that anyway in life. If 10 people in a room agree about something, there's got to be a scam going on. And so I had no real problem with questioning the fat thing. And two quick stories. I remember hearing an interview with the two fat ladies. Yes. The fatter of the two. It sounds terrible. They're both no longer with us. She was going on about this and saying, no, there's nothing wrong with eating fat. And I thought, well, and then she'd got a very low cholesterol score. And there was this sort of weedy-like presenter saying, oh, no, you shouldn't be saying that on live radio. And I thought, yes, you should. I'm really pleased to hear this. So you've got to go against the consensus. You've got to be a bit of a rebel. And I think part of the human condition is actually to rebel against what we're being told. I remember going to one of the Mind Store courses, this guy, a youngish sort of fellow, he's quite a chubby guy, which is by the by. And he worked in Edinburgh law office for a firm of solicitors. Yeah. And I said, that must be a bit tough going with all this sort of positive thinking and the stuff we're hearing from Jack Black on stage. He said, well, it might be. I said, do you sort of turn it off when you go into work? Oh, no, he said, no, you should see my desk at work. I've got these helium balloons, multicolored twizzle sticks and streamers there. And everybody else thinks I'm crazy. Yeah. But no, I would say he was the sanest guy in that office, and I hope if he's watching, he was an inspiration. So I kind of thought of him. I didn't have too much of a problem with it, really. Give or take, the wife sort of looking at me with increasing alarm. But no, fat is good for you. You don't have to read too far to work out that, in fact, what we've been told by the American cereal market, and indeed, I've got to be careful, our own farming community is a load of codswallop, which is a high fat thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's I was going to have a comment, that earlier on we stopped for a moment. Well, I'll go back to it, I suppose. This is the day after the night before when a prince and his wife were on television with Oprah Winfrey. And one of the things that comes out of that is, what apparently comes out of that is what we also, I think many of us suspect anyway, that the media is controlling the narrative, and that, well, even the royal family are scared of them. Certainly, if we look at the COVID thing, what seems to be pretty clear is very early on the media got a hold of it, frightened the life out of us, and Boris bumbling along said, oh, well, we better do something, rather than looking at the science. To come back to yourself, Andy, you've kind of let a little cat out the bag here. Maybe you do have the background in journalism. Do you not get ashamed sometimes at your colleagues and how they've been treating this past year? I mean, there's just no debate. There's no one. You're saying, you're quite rightly, the way you were brought into it and the way you were performing, you wanted to question consensus. It doesn't seem to be happening. What do you think about that?
I think the press has let us down very badly, simply because everybody seems to be agreeing. Whereas, if I was running the Daily Mail or the Daily Record or something, I'd say, look, we used to do this. Go out and write an article saying COVID's a load of nonsense. Yeah. And we just sort of run it for balance, whether you believe it or not. Yeah. And that's not happening now. It's not happening politically. It's not happening medically. And it's not happening in the press. as for, I don't know, Prince Harry and co, I don't know what to make of that. But yeah, I think they need to do a mind score course.
Yeah, absolutely. They must be eating well, though. They seem to get a good old age out there. So there's the old Prince there. He's in his late 90s. He's done very, very well at the moment. They must be eating something that's good. It might be interesting to find out.
Well, I know the Queen doesn't eat pasta. Apparently, if you meet her, you're told not to serve spaghetti in case it splashes over the ermine. So yeah.
So we've gone a good old while here. Is there any, I mean, I suppose you can imagine there'll be a lot of people who come on to the thing on the Wednesday night who have already made the journey. I know lots of them have. Some of them, I was looking for you guys who maybe just made the transition within the year. There's a lot of people who've done it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and so on. But then there will still be some people thinking about it. Is there anything, I'll go around each of you, but is there anything you'd like to say that might encourage or inspire your sort of fellow sort of Wednesday nighters? Anything you'd like to say? So Bridget, maybe yourself, maybe particularly to the women. You're the only one here tonight, but anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, actually, and I will say it to women. I mean, I'm 56 now.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm at that age. And actually, the keto diet makes a big difference to your tropical moments.
Yeah.
I have to say. Yeah. Mine had almost gone. I didn't have a lot of problem with them. But again, when I fell off the wagon, bang, straight back.
Right.
And they do say sugar doesn't help it. So I would say yes. And the other thing about doing keto, if you, apart from feeling really great and really healthy, the first place you lose the weight is round the middle.
Yes.
I can look down now and I don't see my stomach anymore. Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, other diets that you do, that's the last place it goes. So even though I've still got more weight to lose, I've lost it off the middle, and I would encourage anybody out there thinking about it, go for it. The benefits are just amazing. Definitely.
Just since you said, do you feel as though you're actually on a diet, or is it for you just like your lifestyle?
No. It's a new lifestyle, and what I like about it as well is, yes, you can cook yourself really lovely meals if you want, but at the same time, you can grab something quick. Yeah. Like say you're in the days when we could go out, or when we can start going out again. If you just want something quick, quickly have a bit of chicken breast.
Yeah.
You don't have to have lots and lots of different stuff with it. That'll do you, because you don't feel hungry. You don't feel. There's times when I actually have to remind myself to eat, and that's just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great foods that I just a big part of my life now is just eggs. I mean, we were told how bad they were as well, weren't we? And yet there they are. They're just the perfect food, the perfect balance from a keto point of view. Perfect macros. What a beautiful food that is, eggs, and the notion you can only have, what was it, 1 or 2 a week or something. You can eat as many as you want and be fine, which is just fantastic. So Andy, what about yourself? Anything you'd like to sort of say to guys towards the end here?
Yeah, just to encourage people to have a go at it. As I say, I kind of struggled with this thyroid thing, and I had tried this low carb thing before. Do you remember that Phil Maffetone, the guy who he's an athletics coach, and he's got it's exactly the same theory. And I did try this years ago and felt absolutely terrible, so I just ditched it. So, if it's tough going, okay, you might relapse or find it a bit difficult, but it can be done. I think patience is my message. Don't expect the weight to fall off at once. If you go on a diet and you lose pounds and pounds in a month, it's just water and stuff coming off you. Whereas if you do this, if you stick to eating loads of meat and fat, which is a huge amount of fun, it really is great. I mean, I've never eaten so well in my life as I am doing now, because a lot of the stuff we eat, like rice, like pasta, like potatoes, if you trace it back, it all goes back. We're all immigrants of one sort or another. You know, your grandparents said potatoes, you can live with them. Same with Italians in America, pasta and so forth. Well, really, if you think it through, we're now in a comparatively rich society. So yeah, you can go out and buy the price of a steak. It'll cost you as much as a pint of beer. I mean, it's ridiculously cheap in those.
Yeah.
So I've every sympathy for people who are struggling financially, sure, but mainly if you avoid things like alcohol and I don't know about you, but since the pandemic started, I've just not been spending money. So I can sashay into a butcher's and say, hey, yeah, give us half a dozen steaks without batting an eyelid. I mean, whether I'll be able to keep that up when the pubs reopen and you are meeting people socially again, I don't know. But yeah, I would just say enjoy it, be encouraged. Looking at all of us today, none of us are particularly, I would say, self-disciplined, finely honed athletes, with the exception of David, of course. And, you know, we've actually managed to do this and do it on our own terms, really. So I'd say be encouraged, be inspired, and good luck.
I mean, I think the summer's coming, or the spring, and I was in my garden earlier on, I was looking at my barbecue. And when I was a vegetarian and occasionally a vegan, barbecue season was just, what can you do as a vegetarian in a barbecue? And now the barbecue is absolutely the best thing since sliced bread, funnily enough, although I don't have it. But one of the things I found about doing this, just when you were talking there, Andy, was I was following that program recently. Rick Steen was doing his Cornwall, and some of the stuff he did was amazing, and a lot of really great farmers. Some of them I was wanting to interview for this, and I might still do in a season 2 or whatever. But it's the experimenting with different things. Like towards the end, there's a whole thing about, or maybe it was at the beginning, I don't remember, but it was like eating beef heart and how wonderful he was talking about how well it tasted, and it was barbecued and sort of Mexican spices. And you could tell it was so succulent and so wonderful. And of course, with Paul Saladino, his whole thing is if you've got heart disease in the family, if you start eating hearts, if you get liver or kidney and you start eating them, then you get better in that area. Who knows? Probably makes sense. And so I've liked the fact that I've been experimenting. I went looking at one of these sort of farm shop things recently, and they do occasionally once a week get a heart in. So I'm hopefully going to get a beef heart and have a go. They certainly can get a lamb heart, so I'm going to experiment there. But yeah, and what about yourself then, David? What's your closing remarks?
Well, I guess if for anyone who's had this, like me, this perpetual battle of getting advice that if you want to feel better, feel fitter, that you've got to move more and eat less, then this is the absolute 100% alternative to that, where you can watch so many improvements in your body. You can feel better, you can sleep better, you can think better, and you don't have to have this constant worry about I haven't run or haven't exercised 3 or 4 or 5 times this week, because it's really all about what's going inside your body that's causing you to feel that way. So really, the message to me would be that if you want a real good alternative to that, then low carb keto is definitely the way to go. My wish is that we, I think you'd mentioned it before, Jack, that we could have a good, honest debate about this, and let's hear for some doctors from both sides. Let's how great! I'd love to see you, Jack, like in a question type format with the whole issue. It could be coronavirus or anything, low carb, high carb, and get it out, because we've gone and found this, or you've brought it to us, Jack, and it's fantastic. And there are some smart people, and there's smart people on the other side, talking about the other side of the coin. So let's have the debates. We're smart people, and we just need the truth. And I'm very cynical about why the truth has been kept under wraps from us. And You know, I'm worried about that. So, but I'm pretty sure it's all going to be blown open soon, because with podcasts like yours, Jack, and these messages continually getting spread around, I think the tables have got to turn, and we've got to have the real conversation about what's making people sick.
Yeah, I mean, going back to how we kicked this off in terms of just talking about Ivor Cummins, the Fat Emperor. I mean, he's repeatedly offered to have debates with all sorts of doctors and professors, and they're terrified because their science, by and large, doesn't back itself up when someone like I mean, I certainly not the person to interview them, but I would love getting him and some of the mainstream guys and let them run riots, you know, because the science is dreadful. I mean, the whole thing about when you look into it, put the hours in, as we will have done. You're all listening to podcasts and so on. It is shocking, isn't it? You look at the scientists and you go, how on earth can they get up in the morning, look at themselves in the mirror when they go to bed at night? It's actually shocking. But it is what it is. Listen, guys, thanks for the three of you for giving me your time. It's been a fantastic, and it flew by like it always does. I'm sure all three of you are going to be up there now with the Fed keys. You know, you'll be scoring like Al Darenberg, you know, getting the big scores. Fantastic. So, look, please, keep doing it. You know, don't, you know, and as I was saying last week, you know, with the two ladies from Edinburgh, you know, I think most of us are in it. Okay, some of us must have been into it for losing weight. I personally didn't, but I've lost weight, which is fantastic. But the thing is, if we're in it for our health, we're not aligned to some religious type thing, not knocking anybody who is. You know, we're not for. I think the truth of the matter is, if something better shows up, we would all follow it, provided the science was there, you know, and people were getting results. It seems to me that the three of you, including myself and the others, in our own journeys, we've found something that sustains us and inspires us for all the years ahead. All the stuff that we're hearing and reading and watching is suggesting that healthy lifespan is going to be there for us. And if we were to go back on the old route, we all know we get almost immediately little signs that our bodies aren't coping. Okay. And maybe even our minds aren't coping. And the thing about why I kept going all year is, it wasn't so much speaking to the converted, it was the fact that I've got family, I've got brothers, you know, I've got a sister, I've got kids, I've got great friends, and I've got clients that are just, and some of the guys I'd be looking at, would be even yet coming on here on a Wednesday night, I know, and you're just dreadfully sad in some ways for them that they couldn't quite see this thing that we've all been able to see and experience. And hopefully it will continue to grow, but it will continue to grow. And this is the final point: is what the two keto dudes were for me the best of the podcast early on when I get into it. They're no longer doing it, but but they're great to go back and find as a resource. But the whole thing there was like, if I can find two people who can find two people, then you do the maths over time, we get to a point when what we know is 80% of the diseases that we're dying of and we're struggling with in the Western world are all because of lifestyle and choices of what we're eating. It's so bloody frightening that that's all it is. So 80% of those terrible things that people die of that are destroying their lives don't have to happen. And so I think I've got more than two. I keep pushing it. And maybe just finally, how have you found attempting to encourage others to put their toe in the water, or have you found that not so easy?
I'll go first.
John, you go. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. I actually have a sister-in-law who was one of the sort of earliest people who were admitted to hospital last year with COVID.
Wow.
She did have an underlying lung condition, and she was very, very ill. She's now got long COVID, yeah. But I've actually managed to persuade her and she's been doing keto now since early January.
Brilliant.
And has noticed a difference. And I keep trying, because some people are saying, because she was maybe, when she got the injection, she was really quite ill, I have to say. And people were saying, maybe you should be eating some more carbs. And I said, no, don't. I said, don't, stick with it. I says, if you're feeling a bit off, I said, maybe increase your fat, just play about with things like that. Yeah. And to be fair, she has, and to have sort of converted her, I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted, because I think it'll make a massive difference to her.
Fantastic. Andy, anybody you've been able to influence to have a wee go?
I don't know. I'm sort of reluctant to impose my views on people. So it's a matter of when it comes up in conversation. And the people I've seen since losing the weight, they say, wow, you've lost it. I have to say, the women notice straight away. The blokes don't seem to. And they'll say, how have you done this? And I'll say, it's down to LCHF, really. I don't go full keto, really, but I do stick religiously to low carb, high fat. And what does that involve? And I'll go into it. In the household where I am, my kids all understand this. I mean, they're grown up, they're 20 plus. And we've stopped eating a lot of carbs. But I mean, I don't want to over egg that. That's the right word, because they will say, well, we've had a low carb dinner. Fine, great. Let's sit down and watch a movie and eat a bar of chocolate. And I'll go, no, that's not quite the way. But so limited success, I guess. But yeah, if you're actually sort of showing what it can do, that's got to help some people. I mean, I see people around here like yourself. I'm in a rural farming community. You'd think it was really healthy, but a mate of mine down the road, heavily diabetic, same sort of thing with another guy, my brother, diabetes. So yeah, we do. It's a struggle to convince people. So yeah, I don't want to sound too pessimistic. I guess we will win this thing in the long run. I wanted to mention also there's a lot of emphasis now on mental health, quite rightly so. And I would say one excellent side effect of this is your mental health improves. Exactly. You do feel better. You feel better anyway, being lighter, but the brain fog lifts. You do feel better about life. And I'm guessing, if you're subject to depression, this kind of thing's got to help. I have a friend who's epileptic and does keto for that reason as well, which I think is how they first sort of worked out what it was. There's a definite mental positive to going keto.
So David, we'll finish with yourself. So any joy in recruiting?
Well, I mean, like Andy, it's really, we haven't really locked down as much as you guys in the UK here in Canada, and even in Nova Scotia. We've actually had a pretty decent run of it here. We haven't locked down as much. So I was able to socialize, and it's through meeting people and them recognizing, oh my goodness, you look great, David. Like, well, what's all that about? Now, we're a little bit more fortunate because I don't know if it's a wave, but there's definitely, when you mention keto or low carb, people get it instantly. They're like, oh yeah, I know about that. I've heard about it. And I'm not, I'm always wary about being evangelistic about these things. So I say to them, look, I feel fantastic. I can't tell you the amount of health benefits I've had, because I'd be here for the next half hour. But if you're seriously interested in it, go look out these guys, Professor Tim Noakes, Dr. Eric Westman, Ivor Cummings. Listen to what they have to say, and then get on this journey, because it works. It only works. And it's really, that's what I've been doing. My immediate family are obviously spotting it as well. My wife's slowly but surely starting to move the carbs off the table. I'm not going to be doing that as a deliberate thing right now, but I've got two teenage boys who, you know what it's like when you're a teenager and they're sporty, they just seem to be able to eat anything and nothing's ever.
It doesn't matter when you're young.
I know. Well, but you know, I'm thinking about their metabolic health. Because you know, decades of it like we've had means that there's damage getting done right now that you could probably put an end to, stop now. So I try to have the conversations with them about it. And you know, one of them's just about to go off to university, so that'd be an important time to have that discussion, because you know, as a university student, you put anything in your body when you're away. You know, it's yeah, I think people live on craft dinner, so that's you know. So
well, the thing, of course, is it's better to pull than push when it comes to this. And obviously, the three of you going about your lives, people see the difference. Yeah, even just as already said, it's our attitudes are brighter. We seem more positive. We're vibrant. We've got more hope or aspiration. Long may it continue, guys. Again, thanks for your time. I'm sure this is going to be a really popular way for us to end season 1. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Cheers, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. See you, Bridget.
Thanks,
see you,
Jack.
Andy. See you, Jack.
Bye.
Bye.